October 25, 1944. Dawn breaks gray over the Philippine Sea off Samar Island. Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita stands on the bridge of battleship Yamato, scanning the horizon through Zeiss binoculars. The center force has emerged from San Bernardino Strait with 4 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 11 destroyers. Behind him, 65,000 tons of the world's most powerful warship cuts through the swells, her 18.1-inch guns trained forward. The goal is simple: obliterate the American invasion fleet at Leyte Gulf before Admiral Halsey's Third Fleet can return from the north. At 0623 hours, Yamato's radar picks up contacts bearing 070 degrees, range 35,000 meters. Through the morning haze, Kurita observes what appears to be a substantial American task force. Multiple carriers, several cruiser-sized escorts, formation suggesting significant strength. His staff calculates the enemy capabilities. Fast fleet carriers, possibly Essex-class, capable of launching coordinated strikes that could devastate his force if allowed to operate freely. The tactical imperative is immediate engagement before the carriers can achieve striking distance. Signal all ships. General attack. Close rapidly and engage. Kurita commands from Yamato's flag bridge. The Japanese battle doctrine, refined through 2 years of Pacific warfare, is precise and methodical. Heavy cruisers will engage the enemy escorts while battleships concentrate fire on the carriers. Destroyer squadrons will execute coordinated torpedo attacks, exploiting their superior long lance weapons with 11-mile range and 1,000-pound warheads. Night fighting expertise, perfected in the Solomon Islands, has proven Japanese surface forces capable of defeating larger American formations through superior tactics and weaponry. Commander Taro Yamazaki, torpedo officer aboard heavy cruiser Haguro, calculates firing solutions as his ship increases speed to 35 knots. The Type 93 long lance torpedoes have demonstrated devastating effectiveness in previous engagements. At Savo Island, at Tassafaronga, at Guadalcanal, these weapons have torn through American battle lines with clockwork precision. Each torpedo carries sufficient explosive power to break a cruiser's back or cripple a battleship. Launched from 8,000 meters, they provide standoff capability that American destroyers cannot match. Range to enemy formation, 30,000 meters and closing, reports the gunnery officer aboard battleship Nagato. The Japanese have committed their most experienced surface combatants to this operation. Captain Shintaro Hashimoto commands destroyer Yukikes, the lucky ship that has survived every major engagement without serious damage. His crew represents the elite of Japanese destroyer warfare, trained in precise torpedo attacks and high-speed maneuvering that has proven superior to American tactics throughout the war. But the contact report reaching Kurita's flagship contains a critical misidentification. The ships steaming 20 miles off Samar's coast are not fleet carriers and heavy cruisers. They are 6 Casablanca-class escort carriers of Task Unit 7743, call sign Taffy 3, under Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague. Each displaces 7,800 tons, carries 28 aircraft, and achieves maximum speed of 18 knots. Screening them are 3 Fletcher-class destroyers and 4 John C. Butler-class destroyer escorts, the smallest combatants in the U.S. Navy's surface fleet. Lieutenant Commander Robert Copeland stands on the bridge of USS Samuel B. Roberts, one of the destroyer escorts assigned to protect the baby flat-tops. His ship displaces 1,745 tons, measures 306 feet overall, mounts 2 5-inch guns and 3 21-inch torpedo tubes. Built in 183 days at Brown Shipbuilding in Houston, commissioned April 28, 1944, she represents mass production rather than naval elegance. Her crew of 224 men averages 19 years of age. Most have never seen combat. Multiple contacts bearing 315 degrees. Large surface ships in line formation. Calls radar operator First Class Thomas Burton from the Combat Information Center. The SG surface search radar indicates the approaching formation spans 12 miles, with major units proceeding at 24 knots in battle formation. The scope display shows contact signatures consistent with battleships and cruisers, far beyond anything Taffy 3 was designed to engage. Admiral Sprague, aboard escort carrier Fanshawe Bay, recognizes the impossible situation immediately. His ships cannot outrun the Japanese force, cannot match their firepower, cannot withdraw without exposing the landing forces at Leyte Gulf to annihilation. The nearest American heavy units are 300 miles away. Third Fleet has been lured north by Ozawa's carrier decoys. Seventh Fleet's battleships are engaged at Surigao Strait. Taffy 3 stands alone against the most powerful surface force the Imperial Japanese Navy has deployed since Midway. Launch all aircraft. Signal all escorts. Close and engage with torpedoes. Sprague orders at 0705 hours. The Japanese tactical doctrine anticipates this response. Enemy destroyers making desperate torpedo attacks represent the primary threat to the battle line, but Japanese countertactics have proven effective. Coordinated evasive maneuvers, overwhelming gunfire, and superior destroyer screens have consistently defeated American torpedo attacks. At the Battle of Tassafaronga, 8 American destroyers managed only 1 torpedo hit despite numerical superiority. At Vela Gulf, despite achieving surprise, American destroyers scored minimal damage before being driven off by counterattacks. Commander Yashineo Katayama, executive officer of destroyer Nawaki, observes the American formation through his binoculars as the range closes to 25,000 meters. The enemy destroyers appear to be Fletcher-class, recognizable by their twin stacks and distinctive silhouette. These ships mount 10 torpedo tubes compared to Nawaki's 8, but their Mark 15 torpedoes have proven inferior to Japanese long lance weapons in range, speed, and warhead power. American destroyer tactics remain predictable. Straight-line approaches, premature launches, insufficient night fighting capability. Enemy destroyer making smoke, reports the forward lookout aboard destroyer Isocase. The American screening ships have begun generating dense black smoke clouds using stack injection systems, obscuring visual targeting while they maneuver for attack positions. This tactic, while effective for concealment, limits their own visual acquisition and fire control. Japanese radar superiority should compensate for the visibility degradation. But the Americans are not following expected tactical doctrine. Instead of withdrawing behind their smokescreen, the destroyers are charging directly toward the Japanese battle line. USS Johnston, under Commander Ernest Evans, increases speed to 35 knots and opens fire at maximum range with her 5-inch guns. Her first salvo, fired at 18,000 yards, brackets the heavy cruiser Kumano's superstructure. The radar-directed Mark 37 fire control system achieves immediate accuracy that surprises the Japanese gunners. Enemy destroyer engaging at extreme range, reports Kumano's gunnery officer. The American 5-inch shells, while incapable of penetrating cruiser armor, are impacting the superstructure with devastating effect. Communications equipment shatters, rangefinders are destroyed, personnel are killed or wounded by shell fragments. The psychological impact of accurate long-range fire disrupts Japanese fire control procedures that depend on precise coordination. Commander Evans pushes Johnston into a high-speed approach, zigzagging through the splashes of 14-inch and 8-inch shells that bracket his ship with increasing accuracy. His tactical calculation is simple but desperate, close to torpedo range before the Japanese guns can achieve decisive hits. At 6,000 yards, he launches 10 Mark 15 torpedoes in a full-spread pattern targeting Kumano and the battleship Congo. The torpedo attack achieves what Japanese doctrine considered impossible. 1 Mark 15 strikes Kumano's bow, detonating with sufficient force to blow away 40 feet of the heavy cruiser's forward section. The ship's speed drops to 12 knots as flooding spreads through 3 compartments. Her Type 93 torpedo mounts are damaged beyond repair, eliminating her primary offensive capability. A second torpedo passes directly under Congo's hull, its magnetic exploder failing to detonate but forcing the battleship to alter course to avoid additional weapons. Kumano reports severe damage to bow section. Ship out of formation. Signals reach Kurita's flagship as the first phase of the engagement develops beyond Japanese expectations. The American destroyer attack has achieved tactical surprise through aggressive maneuvering that defies standard defensive procedures. Rather than launching torpedoes at maximum range and withdrawing, the enemy ships are pressing their attacks at point-blank range where Japanese defensive fire cannot achieve maximum effectiveness. USS Hull and USS Herman follow Johnston's example, closing to torpedo range despite increasingly accurate Japanese gunfire. Hull, under Commander Leon Kintberger, launches 5 torpedoes at battleship Nagato before taking devastating hits from 14-inch shells that destroy her forward gun mount and damage her engineering spaces. Herman, commanded by Commander Amos Hathaway, penetrates to 4,000 yards of the heavy cruiser Chikuma before launching her full torpedo spread. The coordinated attack by 3 American destroyers creates tactical chaos within the Japanese formation. Battleships are forced to maneuver independently to avoid torpedo tracks, breaking their coordinated fire control. Heavy cruisers turn away from the torpedo threats, opening the range and reducing their gunnery effectiveness. The precise battle formation that Kurita had developed for engaging American heavy units dissolves into individual ship actions as each captain responds to immediate threats. But the most audacious American attack comes from the smallest ship in Taffy 3's screen. USS Samuel B. Roberts, designated D-413, was never intended to engage capital ships. Her mission parameters included convoy escort, anti-submarine warfare, and screening duties against light surface forces. Her 5-inch guns cannot penetrate cruiser armor beyond 8,000 yards. Her 3 torpedo tubes provide minimal offensive capability compared to destroyer armament. Lieutenant Commander Copeland addresses his crew over the ship's general announcing system at 0830 hours as the range to the Japanese formation closes to 12,000 yards. This will be a fight against overwhelming odds from which survival cannot be expected. We will do what damage we can. The words echo through the destroyer Escorts' cramped compartments, reaching 224 men who understand they are about to charge the most powerful surface force on Earth with a ship designed to hunt submarines. Chief Gunner's mate Paul Carr takes position at the after 5-inch gun mount as Samuel B. Roberts increases speed to 28 knots, her maximum capability. The destroyer Escorts engineering plant, rated at 12,000 shaft horsepower, drives twin screws through reduction gears that scream under maximum load. Black smoke pours from her single stack as the engineering crew bypasses safety protocols to extract every possible knot of speed. Range to nearest cruiser, 8,000 yards, reports the gun director operator as Samuel B. Roberts closes on the heavy cruiser Chokai. The enemy ship mounts 10 8-inch guns capable of firing 250-pound projectiles at 25-mile range. Her secondary battery includes 8 5-inch guns and numerous smaller weapons. Against this firepower, the destroyer Escort presents 2 5-inch mounts for 40mm guns and 10 20mm machine guns. Copeland orders his ship directly toward Chokai's port beam, gambling that the cruiser's main battery cannot depress sufficiently to engage a target at close range. The tactical theory, developed through pre-war exercises, suggests that small ships can exploit the dead zones of larger vessels by closing to ranges where heavy guns cannot track. But the theory has never been tested against Japanese cruisers in actual combat. At 4,000 yards, Samuel B. Roberts opens fire with both 5-inch guns while maintaining maximum speed toward the torpedo launching position. Her first salvo, fired under local control due to damaged fire control equipment, impacts Chokai's superstructure with devastating effect. The 54-pound shells, while insufficient to penetrate armor, destroy the cruiser's radar antennas, communication equipment, and optical range finders. American destroyer Escort engaging at close range reports Chokai's bridge as additional 5-inch shells bracket the ship's forward turrets. The psychological effect of small-caliber fire proves more significant than the physical damage. Bridge personnel take cover, communications become disrupted, and fire control procedures break down under the stress of close-range engagement. At 1,800 yards, Samuel B. Roberts launches her 3 Mark 15 torpedoes, while under fire from Chokai's secondary battery. The 5-inch shells from the cruiser's portside guns straddle the destroyer Escort, one projectile passing through her forward smokestack without exploding. Chief Carr maintains continuous fire from the after gun mount, his crew feeding 54-pound shells into the breach as rapidly as mechanical loading allows. The torpedo attack achieves complete success. 1 Mark 15 strikes Chokai amidships, its 825-pound warhead detonating against the cruiser's hull below the waterline. The explosion ruptures fuel bunkers, starts fires throughout the ship's after sections, and causes severe flooding that forces the engineering crew to abandon the after engine room. Chokai's speed drops to 18 knots as damage control teams struggle to maintain stability. Chokai reports torpedo hit amidships. Severe damage to propulsion plant. The signal reaches Kurita's flagship as the tactical situation continues to deteriorate beyond Japanese planning assumptions. The American destroyer and destroyer escort attacks have achieved a 25% hit rate with their torpedo weapons, far exceeding the expected 8% effectiveness calculated from previous engagements. More critically, the aggressive close-range tactics have disrupted Japanese fire control and formation integrity. Vice Admiral Kurita, observing the engagement from Yamato's flag bridge, faces a tactical dilemma that Japanese doctrine has not anticipated. The enemy force, while smaller than initially assessed, has demonstrated combat effectiveness that exceeds all previous American destroyer attacks. 3 major units of the center force have sustained significant damage, formation discipline has broken down, and the coordinated battle plan has devolved into individual ship engagements. Signal all units. Reform battle line bearing 180 degrees. Maintain formation discipline. Kurita orders, attempting to restore tactical control over his scattered forces. But the American attacks have created a tactical environment that prevents coordinated response. Battleships are maneuvering independently to avoid torpedo tracks. Cruisers are engaged in individual gun duels with destroyers, and the destroyer screen has been drawn away from their protective positions. Samuel B. Roberts continues her close-range engagement with Chokai despite taking increasing damage from Japanese fire. A 6-inch shell from light cruiser Noshiro penetrates her forward gun mount, killing 3 men and jamming the loading mechanism. Chief Carr's after gun mount continues firing under manual control, the crew cranking the powerless mount into position for each shot while feeding shells by hand into the superheated breech. After gun mount local control. Maintain fire. Copeland orders as his ship sustains additional hits. An 8-inch shell from Chokai penetrates the destroyer Escorts hull near the waterline, flooding the forward magazine and forcing the crew to abandon the forward 5-inch gun. The ship's list increases to 10 degrees as seawater pours through the shell hole, but Carr's gun crew maintains their rapid fire. At 0917 hours, a salvo of 3 14-inch shells from battleship Congo brackets Samuel B. Roberts at 3,000 yards. The massive projectiles, each weighing 1,400 pounds, create waterspouts 200 feet high when they impact the sea around the destroyer Escort. The concussion from near misses Buckle's hull plates, shatters windows throughout the ship, and throws men to the deck from the tremendous pressure waves. One 14-inch shell strikes Samuel B. Roberts amidships, penetrating through her unarmored hull and exploding in the engine room. The blast destroys both boilers, ruptures steam lines throughout the engineering spaces, and kills or scalds 18 men trapped below decks. The destroyer Escort speed drops to 0 as steam pressure collapses and electrical power fails throughout the ship. Chief Carr maintains fire from the after gun mount despite the loss of power. His crew operates the gun under manual control, physically cranking the mount in bearing and elevation while loading shells by hand into a breech so hot that the metal glows red. The gunner's mate, wounded by shell fragments but refusing medical attention, directs his crew in firing 324 rounds during the 35-minute engagement. After magazine reports 5 rounds remaining, calls the ammunition handler as Samuel B. Roberts settles deeper in the water. The destroyer Escort has expended virtually her entire ammunition supply during the close-range gun duel, achieving hit rates that exceed peacetime gunnery exercises. Her 5-inch shells have destroyed Chokai's fire control systems, damaged her propulsion plant, and started fires throughout the heavy cruiser's superstructure. A final 8-inch salvo from Chokai penetrates Samuel B. Roberts after magazine at 0935 hours. The explosion detonates the remaining 5-inch ammunition, breaking the destroyer Escort's back and causing catastrophic structural failure. Chief Carr, holding the last shell for his gun, is mortally wounded by the blast but continues directing his crew until consciousness fades. Abandon ship. All hands abandon ship. Copeland orders as Samuel B. Roberts begins her final plunge. The destroyer Escort that had charged the Japanese battle line like a battleship disappears beneath the Philippine Sea after achieving what naval historians would later call the most audacious small ship action in modern warfare. But the damage to Kurita's center force extends beyond the loss of individual ships. The coordinated attacks by Taffy 3's destroyers and destroyer escorts have shattered Japanese tactical formations and disrupted the planned assault on Leyte Gulf. Kumano, with her bow blown away, can barely maintain steerage. Chokai, flooding and on fire, has been forced out of formation. Heavy cruiser Suzuya has sustained damage from air attacks that followed the surface engagement. More critically, the aggressive American destroyer tactics have consumed time that Kurita cannot recover. The center force has been engaged for over 2 hours in a running gun battle that has prevented rapid closure on the primary objective. American reinforcements, both surface and air, are approaching from multiple directions. The window for achieving tactical surprise at Leyte Gulf has closed. Signal from Yamato. Center force withdrawing through San Bernardino Strait. The message reaches surviving American ships at 1020 hours. Kurita, facing the prospect of additional destroyer attacks combined with increasing airstrikes, has decided to terminate the operation rather than risk his remaining ships in continued combat. The decision, controversial within Japanese naval circles, preserves the center force from complete destruction but abandons the strategic objective. The surviving crew of Samuel B. Roberts, 120 men floating in life rafts and debris, watch the Japanese battleships disappear over the northern horizon. Their destroyer escort, outweighed 40-1 by the enemy battleship Yamato, had achieved what larger ships failed to accomplish. Through aggressive tactics and desperate courage, the tin can that fought like a battleship had contributed to turning Japanese victory into retreat. Petty Officer Second-Class Robert Whitty, clinging to a life raft with 9 shipmates, observes the oil slick marking where Samuel B. Roberts made her final dive. The destroyer escort had exceeded every design parameter and tactical expectation during her 35-minute engagement with the Japanese battle line. Her crew, averaging 19 years of age, had demonstrated combat effectiveness that surpassed veteran units with years of experience. Chokai, dead in the water, reports a TBM Avenger pilot from escort carrier White Plains as American aircraft continue attacking the withdrawing Japanese force. The heavy cruiser, torpedoed by Samuel B. Roberts and damaged by bomb hits, cannot maintain formation speed. Her crew abandons ship at 1,100 hours as internal explosions spread throughout her hull. The 8,800-ton cruiser capsizes and sinks, taking 108 men with her. The tactical results of the battle off Samar confound Japanese naval doctrine and American expectations alike. Kurita's center force, with overwhelming superiority in guns, armor, and speed, has been repulsed by a collection of escort carriers and small combatants that represented the weakest elements of the U.S. Navy's surface fleet. The engagement demonstrates that aggressive tactics and superior morale can overcome material disadvantages under specific circumstances. But the strategic implications extend beyond the immediate tactical results. The Japanese failure to destroy the American landing forces at Leyte Gulf represents the final collapse of their surface fleet as an offensive weapon. Future operations will be limited to defensive actions and kamikaze attacks that trade ships for temporary tactical advantages. The center force, while escaping destruction, has exhausted its offensive potential and will spend the remainder of the war in port. Admiral Chester Nimitz, reviewing the action reports from Taffy 3, writes in his official dispatch, "The success of Taffy 3 was nothing short of special dispensation from the Lord Almighty." The phrase captures the miraculous nature of the engagement where American destroyer escorts achieved tactical results that exceeded the capabilities of heavier ships through aggressive leadership and exceptional crew performance. Lieutenant Commander Copeland, rescued after 50 hours in the water, submits his action report 3 weeks later from a hospital bed in Manila. His description of Samuel B. Roberts' final action emphasizes the crew's performance under impossible conditions. The ship fought with a gallantry that was an inspiration to all who witnessed it. No ship and crew ever performed their duties with greater courage or determination in the face of overwhelming odds. The Japanese assessment of the battle off Samar reveals the psychological impact of the American destroyer attacks. Captain Kosaku Aruga, commanding destroyer Yahagi during the engagement, writes in his post-action report, "The enemy destroyers displayed an aggressiveness and disregard for their own safety that we had not previously encountered. Their willingness to close to point-blank range disrupted our fire control and prevented coordinated attacks." Vice Admiral Kurita, defending his decision to withdraw, explains to Imperial Navy headquarters, "The enemy force demonstrated tactical capabilities inconsistent with our intelligence assessments. Their destroyers attacked with a ferocity that suggested the presence of major fleet units beyond the horizon. Continuation of the engagement risked the loss of the entire center force without achieving the primary objective." The explanation reveals the extent to which American destroyer tactics had exceeded Japanese expectations. Ships that Japanese doctrine classified as minor threats had achieved tactical results that forced the abandonment of a strategic operation. The psychological warfare effect of aggressive close-range attacks had proven as significant as the physical damage inflicted by gunfire and torpedoes. Chief Gunner's Mate Paul Carr, posthumously awarded the Navy Cross, represents the individual heroism that characterized the Samuel B. Roberts action. His gun crew, operating under manual control after electrical power failed, maintained a rate of fire that exceeded peacetime training standards while under direct fire from Japanese heavy cruisers. The after 5-inch gun mount fired continuously for 35 minutes, expending its entire ammunition allowance before the final explosion. The technical performance of American destroyer escorts during the battle off Samar demonstrated capabilities that their designers had not anticipated. Samuel B. Roberts, built as an anti-submarine vessel, had engaged and damaged a heavy cruiser through close-range gunnery that exploited weaknesses in Japanese defensive doctrine. Her engineering plant, operated beyond design limits, had achieved speeds that enabled tactical maneuvers impossible under normal circumstances. Sonarman First Class Oscar Cromer, one of Samuel B. Roberts' survivors, describes the ship's final moments. "She went down fighting. Chief Carr was still trying to load that last shell when the magazine exploded. The ship just broke in two, but we had gotten in our licks. We showed them that Americans don't back down, no matter how big the odds." The statement captures the ethos that transformed a routine screening mission into a legendary naval action. Samuel B. Roberts, never intended to engage battleships, had demonstrated that courage and aggressive tactics could achieve results beyond material capabilities. Her crew, trained for anti-submarine warfare, had adapted to surface combat with effectiveness that surprised both sides. The discovery of Samuel B. Roberts' wreck in June 2022, at a depth of 22,621 feet, confirmed her status as the deepest shipwreck ever found. The exploration footage shows the destroyer escort broken in two sections but with her gun mounts still trained toward the enemy. The visual evidence supports the historical record of a ship that fought to the end against impossible odds. Admiral William Halsey, whose Third Fleet had been lured away from Leyte Gulf by the Japanese carrier Decoy, writes in his memoirs, "The performance of Taffy III, and particularly the destroyer escorts, saved the entire Leyte operation. Ships that were designed to protect convoys against submarines engaged and defeated the most powerful surface force in the Japanese Navy. It was the finest example of American fighting spirit in the entire war." The tactical lessons of the battle off Samar influenced American naval doctrine for decades. The aggressive use of destroyers in close-range attacks became standard procedure for engaging superior forces. The concept that small ships, properly handled, could disrupt larger formations through coordinated torpedo attacks became fundamental to American surface warfare tactics. Japanese naval historians, analyzing the battle in post-war studies, identify the American destroyer attacks as the decisive factor in the engagement. Captain Atsushi Oi, Imperial Navy Staff Officer, writes, "The enemy destroyers attacked with such determination that our formation became scattered and our fire control disrupted. We had not anticipated that American small ships would press their attacks to such close range despite overwhelming gunfire." The assessment reveals the extent to which Japanese doctrine had underestimated American fighting qualities. Surface combatants that Japanese planning had dismissed as minor threats had achieved tactical results that forced the withdrawal of a superior force. The battle off Samar represented a failure of intelligence assessment as much as tactical execution. Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague, commanding Taffy III during the engagement, emphasizes the role of individual initiative in achieving tactical success. Every ship and every man performed beyond the call of duty. The destroyer escorts, in particular, demonstrated a level of courage and determination that exceeded anything in their training. They charged the Japanese battle line like David attacking Goliath, and through God's grace, they prevailed. The biblical analogy captures the essence of an engagement where material disadvantages were overcome through moral superiority and tactical innovation. Samuel B. Roberts and her sister ships had demonstrated that the human element remained decisive in naval warfare despite advances in technology and firepower. The cost of the American victory was significant. Taffy III lost 2 escort carriers, 2 destroyers, and 1 destroyer escort. Over 1,000 American sailors died during the engagement, comparable to the combined losses at Coral Sea and Midway. But the strategic results justified the casualties. The Japanese surface fleet's final offensive operation had been defeated by the weakest elements of the American battle line. Samuel B. Roberts' action report, submitted by her surviving officers, concludes, "The ship and crew performed their duties in the highest traditions of the naval service. Despite overwhelming odds, they engaged the enemy with courage and determination that reflected the finest qualities of American seamanship. The destroyer escort fought like a battleship and died like 1 inch." The epitaph summarizes the transformation of a mass-produced escort vessel into a legendary warship through the courage of her crew and the leadership of her officers. Samuel B. Roberts had proven that fighting spirit could overcome material disadvantages when combined with aggressive tactics and exceptional seamanship. The Japanese withdrawal from the Philippine Sea marked the end of their surface fleet as an offensive weapon. Future operations would be limited to defensive actions that traded ships for temporary advantages without achieving strategic objectives. The center force, while avoiding complete destruction, had expended its combat potential in a failed attempt to reverse American momentum in the Pacific. The battle off Samar stands as the ultimate vindication of American industrial strategy in World War II. Ships built in months rather than years, manned by teenagers rather than veterans, had defeated the most experienced surface combatants in the Japanese Navy through superior morale and innovative tactics. The victory demonstrated that democratic societies could produce fighting forces that exceeded the capabilities of totalitarian military systems. Lieutenant Commander Robert Copeland, awarded the Navy Cross for his leadership during the engagement, writes in his final report, "USS Samuel B. Roberts, DE-413, fulfilled her mission and upheld the honor of the United States Navy. Her crew, faced with impossible odds, chose to fight rather than flee. In doing so, they demonstrated the spirit that will ensure American victory in this war." The statement captures the essence of an engagement that transcended its tactical significance to become a symbol of American determination. Samuel B. Roberts, the destroyer escort that fought like a battleship, had proven that courage and commitment could achieve the impossible when the stakes demanded nothing less than everything. The wreck of Samuel B. Roberts lies 22,621 feet beneath the Philippine Sea, the deepest shipwreck ever discovered. Her guns remain trained toward the enemy, frozen in the final moment of an engagement that changed the course of the Pacific War. She represents the thousands of small ships and millions of young Americans who turned the tide of history through courage, sacrifice, and an unwavering belief in their cause. The Japanese admirals who had scoffed at American destroyer escorts learned too late that they had underestimated both the ships and the men who sailed them. In the waters off Samar, quantity and quality had merged with courage to create a force that no amount of armor or firepower could withstand. The tin cans had indeed fought like battleships, and in doing so, they had proven that the American spirit was mightier than the mightiest guns afloat.